This is part two of the videos that I'm making about faith and art. And I got cut off kind of short. I apologize for part one, but my iPad is on the blink. I'm a little concerned about it, but I'm trying to do this on my iPhone. Anyway, in part one, I suggested that the work of art is creating a space where the mind can enter and look at particular objects that sort of bounce off each other in an interesting fashion, and the mind is drawn into this and enters a kind of speculative mode where it finds meaning and it finds further meaning, and it feels that it's converging on some revelation, but it never quite gets there. It's the sense of approach, the sense of convergence, which is the magic of the mystery. This is why material objects and sensations as they're deployed by the various arts can, if you will, trick the mind into thinking that it perceives the imperceptible. It's a way of reaching out beyond the sensual world into the metaphysical world. And it's a trick, as poets since Hesiod have been saying. Poets are great liars, but it's a beautiful lie. If you think that beauty, if you want to think of it as a lie, it's a lie in the sense that it is presenting you a truth that is greater than the sum of its parts. There is spirit wrapped up in all of those material forms. Now, this is overall a very negative kind of presentation in part two, because I'm going to talk about the academy. You would think that the academy, that colleges and universities would be really fascinated in this creative activity of the mind, and that they would want to expose younger people to great works of art and explore just how this works. But it seems to me, present the arts as a great lie in a different fashion. And the lie is coming from the academy. The academy is saying that all art is propaganda, in the unfortunate phrase of Chinua Achebe, who is a great a Nigerian novelist, author of Things Fall Apart. I love his work. He's a lousy philosopher. If a work is propaganda, it's not art by definition, because that means that it's transmitting a single message, that there is a destination where you get off the train. This is what it means. This is where it's taking you. It has a single ultimate persuasive objective in mind, and by the definition that I presented to you, that's not art. Immanuel Kant uses a word that's translated disinterested. Now, disinterested doesn't mean uninterested. It means not partial, not personally, selfishly engaged. Impartial is a good synonym. Art is impartial in the sense that as the mind is wandering through this shadowy wood of possible meaning, it's not concerned about bringing out of the forest any particular discovery. It's not looking for any specific message. There's this kind of imaginative play that's going on here, an exploration. If the work is going to transmit a specific message, then again, this is not a work of art. Now, the Academy tells us that all art is of this sort, and it always has been. If it's art of the great books, canonical, classical sort of art, then it's been stamped for approval by the patriarchy, and the patriarchy brings you up on these works. It rears you on them so that you imbibe the values that make you a good minion, that make you an obedient slave to tradition, to the past, to the pyramid of power on whose top, of course, they sit. So, gee, that's so inspiring. That takes away any sort of mystery, any sort of possibility of beauty, any sort of possible aesthetic response. It just means that all of the officially approved art is frankly a load of crap. You're just being sold a bill of goods. Now there's another kind of art, which is the subversive kind. And these are the voices of the oppressed who occupy probably half of the typical anthology when you have a world literature survey or something. And believe me, I have taught these for decades, so I'm very familiar with the transition that's taken place in the anthologies. Every year it seemed that they were larded with more and more of the works of the oppressed, and I was always kind of confused by this, because if these people were, especially particularly women, have obviously have always been kept down by their husbands and their fathers and their brothers, and they're chained to the stove, so they can't write that great novel that's inside of them. But somehow they did. I guess they went to the cupboard and dashed off a few lines when no man was looking, and somehow these texts have been preserved for centuries, and somehow we've discovered them, and they fill up half of our anthologies now. So I'm not quite sure how that works, but that's the other kind of art. That's the approved kind of art in the academy, the rebellious, subversive sort. And it's all propaganda, only this is good propaganda. This time, the persuasive message is rise up and throw off your chains, you oppressed masses. All of it is demystification. Everything that I talked about in part one about mystery is shipped out to Siberia. You're, as an artist or as a creator of works of art, your opus is passed under review and accepted or rejected, elevated or shipped out to be burned in the public square based upon the political message. There's nothing more to it. Isn't that depressing? And these are the people who are the elite in our understanding. Supposedly, they're the ones whom we entrust in our society with transmitting our literary heritage. Well, are you surprised that the Academy has no tolerance of faith? Certainly not of Judaism or Christianity. There are certain faiths that are, for the moment, politically tolerated. We'll see how long that lasts. But the idea of otherness, and ultimate otherness, the ultimate otherness is the beyond, that which we do not express because we cannot express it, and yet we feel its reality within us. No, forget about that. That's just you swimming around the hook that some kind of manipulator is trying to get you to bite on. There's no mystery. There's no ultimate otherness. There's no beyond. This is all there is. This life. Grab your rights. Get your stuff. Get your privileges away from the other guys who used to be privileged, and throw your elbows around and make your place in the world. There couldn't be anything more counter-artistic or counter religion and faith. This is what our institutions are giving us. Let me, just for an example, my time's already running short, but let me see if I can dredge this out of my memory. The French poet Baudelaire is one of my favorites. He's a master of tropes, of metaphor. And he wrote a poem which was condemned because it was about lesbians, and you were not supposed to write about that subject in the mid-19th century. I think he actually did a little jail time because of it. Today, for writing the same poem, he would probably pay a much heavier penalty because the poem is actually critical of Delphine and Hippolyta, the two lesbians. But the very last quatrain of the poem runs something like, Loin des peuples vivants, errantes condamnés, à travers les déserts, courez comme des loups, Faites votre destin, âme désordonnée, et fuyez l'infini que vous portez en vous. Far from living peoples, wandering, condemned, run like wolves across the wasteland. Accomplish your destiny, you disordered spirits, and run from the infinite that you carry inside of yourselves. Oh my gosh, what a powerful, if I ever had to make a case for poetry or for the arts, all you'd really need to do, all anyone would need to do is just put the work of art in front of the audience. It's self-evident. It makes its own case. That's not propaganda, but it's going to go to the gulag today because it's critical of the lesbian lifestyle, and that's all we need to know. We're not going to find our way to God through studying under people like that, and we're not going to find our way to understanding literature either. It's just a slaughterhouse. The academy is a slaughterhouse of spiritual values. You'd be better off not going at all if you want to verse yourself in the humanities. As Jordan Peterson says, just read. Acquire your own library and just read for yourself. I hesitate to add this at the end, but I guess I kind of have to. I'm going to say a few words about the mainstream Christian church and its role in all of this. And really all I want to do is just point out that the church is doing the same thing as the academy. We have to be honest, genuine practitioners of our faith. We have to engage in certain behaviors. It's not enough to say that you believe, to mouth the formulas. You have to carry a placard. You have to protest. You have to sign petitions. You have to get out there and be a political activist. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but all of this, it seems to reduce to certain politically correct positions. For instance, if you're just to take one, if you don't believe that all of the poor in the world should be able to pour into our society and profit from our generous social welfare programs, then what kind of Christian are you? Forget it. You're out of here. You're damned and excommunicate. You talk a good game, but you're not doing it. You have to put up here. You have to carry that placard. That's the very attitude that is so active in academe when a work like Baudelaire's poem has to come out and support the gay lifestyle, or you're so out of it, you're gone. We're never going to read you again. Your work doesn't exist. We've airbrushed it from history. We found a diary that a housewife wrote 300 years ago, and that's going to take your place in the anthology. It's too bad, isn't it? Especially since the Christian, so-called self-styled Christian promoters of this debased form of faith are engineers of the trains that are taking our spiritual heritage out to Siberia. And the day is not too far in the future when they're going to be sitting in the boxcars themselves. They don't seem to realize that the cause that they're serving is of this world and will quickly have no further use for them. They don't seem to have very much use for the spirituality of their faith, and very soon the secular utopians whom they serve will have no use whatever for them and their good works. Boy, do we need art in our society. We need a rebirth of art that could, I believe, as well as anything, open up new channels to spirituality, whether to Christianity or something else. But first we have to get through the door, and a rediscovery of art could open that door.